Good morning. I wanted to talk today about how to achieve balance. I'm going to be using archetypal language and also some universal laws, explaining a little cosmology, and wrapping up with the spiritual adulting map, which has all the glyphs of the archetypes and the 6 categories that you'll constantly be using throughout life in order to achieve balance. So, what is balance? Balance is personal. There is no such thing as a balanced individual that's like a formula for everybody. It's a very personal balance. However, it does have the same elements for everybody, the same 6 components, and balance or imbalance all occurs in the mind. It is then that the body and the emotions, what we would call our life or our health or our money or our time and the way we manage these things, that show back to us or reflect back to us how we are out of balance. But this is all a mental construct, and I'll explain how this occurs. So your balance is yours and no one else's. It has the same elements and components for everyone. These are gender traits. We will be using words male and female, not in terms of earthly, but of what's called the law of gender, which is one of the universal laws that categorizes traits as male and female. And you'll see this in the spiritual adulting map. Your power currency, are you leaning more towards an overt power currency or a covert power currency? Pain and pleasure. Do you see pain as pleasure or pleasure as pain? Do you lean more towards freedom, wanting to avoid any sort of limitations, or are you seeking more safety where you want to be more anchored in? Are you the angel of your story or the demon of it? And are you sovereign or are you in sabotage? So these are the categories that we're going to be struggling with throughout of our life. And they're in a set of pairs, and you'll see that in the spiritual adulting brain map. So the imbalance occurs in these pairs, and they're also known as archetypes. There's many names for them, but really it boils down to these 6 categories: caregiver versus hero, trickster and creator, lover and seeker, rebel and sage, innocent and magician, the ruler and the wound. And these correlate with these. So the caregiver would be the more feminine, where the hero would be the more masculine traits. The trickster is more of the covert power currency, and the creator is more overt. The lover is more about pleasure as pain. The seeker is more as pain as pleasure. The rebel wants more freedom. The sage wants more safety. The innocent is the angel of the story or the victim. And the magician is the demon or the criminal in the story, the villain or the perpetrator. And the ruler and the wound, are you sovereign through your wound? Have you made your wound be your purpose? Or are you still holding on and sabotaging yourself through your wound? So it's all in your head. All imbalance is mental. So let me give you a bit of cosmology. So here I have the quintessential cosmic egg. Imagine this egg as the universe. And no matter what your spiritual beliefs, preconception, you came from some intact energy field. So let's call it the universe. In spirituality, it's known as the principle of mentalism, and it's a universal law where there is no other, and we're all part of that same, what I call the cookie dough in the sky or the heavens. So no matter what you believe, preconception, we're all part of this cosmic egg or this cosmic energy. This is known as undifferentiated consciousness. It's viewed as a circle in most symbologies. So why a circle? It has no cracks. It has no labels. It has no good or bad or values or attachments to it. It simply just is. And so it's undifferentiated. You can't tell the difference between my energy and your energy. We're just all one part of that same cosmic consciousness. Upon conception, the moment that your parents conceive you, imbalance occurs. You become the manifestation, your body, your life, your emotions, the way you think, become the imbalance that was in your parents. So now you are no longer undifferentiated. Now your egg has been cracked. You are no longer part of the cosmic egg, but rather you're in your mom's belly, and conception and pregnancy and birth and so forth occurs. So simply, your body and your emotions, which are housed in your body, are simply responding to the imbalance of your mind. If we work through the balance of the mind, our life changes, our body changes, our health changes, our time management changes, our financial budgets change, and we can start to see what's known as the law of correspondence, as within, so without. So whatever's happening internally is represented externally. At the moment of conception, all 6 levels began. You began to start to decide conceptually your power currency, your gender traits, your pain, pleasure, and this is directly related to your parents and their state of mind, or what we call consciousness, at the moment of your conception. The purpose of your lifetime is to integrate these 6 categories, create your balance of them, what you deem is balanced for you, and integrate all 6 of these categories. This is the only way that we can return to an undifferentiated consciousness, what we call wholeness, while we are split in the body. This is called universal consciousness. This is called unified consciousness. Sometimes it's called the shaman, the psychic, the intuitive, the mystic, where we're living whole in a differentiated body because we have boundaries and we're different people, but we're still remaining part of the undifferentiated consciousness or the universe or mysticism or whatever words you feel comfortable using. For wholeness, going back to the undifferentiated consciousness or higher vibration or universal consciousness, you need to find the balance of each pair, not just one, all of them. And so you're going to constantly be spending your life working on one pair. You can spend 40, 50, 60 years working on one primary pair. And then once you integrate that one, the others begin to show up. So let's look at those pairs. So each pair is lived out as low consciousness or high consciousness. You can live it out in this higher consciousness, in this universal consciousness, in this mysticism, in this enlightened consciousness, or you can live it out exactly as it was presented to you at conception in your low consciousness. The idea is that you know when to use which level of consciousness. One is not better than the other. They're both necessary. We'll see this in the power currency. But we do need to find an appropriateness for when to use which pair and when to use each archetype. So again, the imbalance is caregiver, hero. This would be your feminine or masculine traits, gender traits down here. Your trickster and creator. Here's your trickster, here's your creator. That's where you get your power currency. Lover and seeker. This is your lover archetype and your seeker archetype. And this decides, do you want pain as pleasure or pleasure as pain? This is your sage archetype. This is your rebel. And are you choosing between safety and freedom? This is your angel or your innocent archetype, and this is your demon or your criminal or your mystic archetype. And are you living your story as the angel or the victim, even the savior? Or are you more of the demon and the criminal and the perpetrator? And here you have your sabotage or your wound or your orphan. you keeping yourself wounded and rejected and abandoned? Or are you sovereign and living out as a ruler, or are you keeping yourself in exile because of your wound and your specialness? So these are the 6 categories. So most people are balancing one extreme. This is known as the law of polarity. If you've watched other videos, I call it the 0 to 100. You're constantly swinging from one extreme. For instance, the angel, you're the victim or the savior of the story, and then you become the demon, or there's a perpetrator in the story. And you're constantly going back from 0 to 100 in your language, in your storytelling, in your narrative, in the characters that show up in your life. So that would be the primary archetypes that you are living. So of the categories, that's going to be the first one that needs to be integrated. The integration is finding what I call the 48 to 52, or the midpoint. The quickest and fastest way to do this is to itemize the good qualities and the bad qualities of your parents and find the midpoint between them. Integrate both the good and the bad. That does not mean doing it opposite, but doing it your own way, accepting that you are all of it, and voila, you become 48 to 52. If only it were that easy. So first identify which pair you see come up in your life most. Are you someone that's really about gender? Do you really harp on being masculine traits? Again, we're not talking about the physical body. Are your traits, are you more of a go-getter? Are you more ambitious? Or are you more in terms of nurturance and caretakers, how you get your value? So this is the first category. Next is your power currency. How do you manipulate and get power? Is it overtly? Are you aggressive? Are you a yeller? Are you very assertive? Do you have to be authentic at all moments, saying the honest truth to everybody and sort of vomit everything you want? Or are you more manipulative? Are you more of a covert power currency? Do you have to go sort of sneak around, subtly drop hints? That is the power currency of preference. We need both. There's a big myth in spirituality that we should always be overt, and that's authentic, and that's honest, and that is not true. On a spiritual path, there's an absolute need for the covert power currency, and as we evolve as beings, we call it wisdom. It's not about not being authentic. It's about being wise and knowing when to speak and how to speak. The lover and the seeker are about how you experience pain and pleasure. Are you what I call a transcendental narcissist, where pain is your pleasure? You prefer to be in the higher realms of the universe, disconnected and dissociated from your body in the name of seeking? Or are you a hedonist? Are you very earth bound? Are you very much about the pleasures of the world that leads you to pain? This is about desires. Desires can be spiritual. Desires can be transcendent. It's just a guise. And so what we want to do is have a balance of spiritual and material. Are you a safety versus freedom person? Are all of your dialogues about being free, about not having a boss, not having a 9 to 5? Or are you more about the safety of a paycheck, having rules and limits and structures and good and bad? This is a very common one because a lot of people want to be not in charge of their, they don't want to have someone in charge of their schedule or their paycheck, but what it is an escapism. It's a chaotic life, not a rebellious or a free life. Freedom is, like all things, in the mind. In your story, do you have this, as Carolyn Myss would call, woundology, that you're constantly a victim in the story? Are you constantly savior in the story? That means that other people are placed as the demons or the criminals or the perpetrators. You are indeed both, and understanding that you are both the savior, the perpetrator in the story is how you would integrate this. And lastly, you have your wound and your ruler. Is your wound ruling you, or are you ruling your life through your wound? What we tend to do is sabotage ourselves to honor the story of the wound, to confirm that we're orphaned, that we're wounded, that we're abandoned and rejected. This allows us to be put in exile through our specialness of this wound. Or are you sovereign? Are you owning your wound and realizing that that is the exact answer to your life and your life's purpose and what you're here to do? And is your wound giving you sovereignty or sabotage? So, what happens at the moment of conception is that that cosmic egg is split. And it's split into masculine and feminine, male, female, energies, traits. When again, not talking about the earthly world in terms of the body and your sex. And so you tend to lean towards masculine, these, or feminine, these traits. So count up in your on your map which you tend to lean towards. So I very much tend to lean towards a hero archetype, definitely an overt power currency. I'm definitely pain is pleasure. I'm rebellious and chaotic in my nature and like my freedom. Over here, I have tended to be more of the victim of the story, and I love the specialness of my wound. So out of the 6, 5 of mine are more masculine in nature. That means that I'm going to be more overt. That means I'm going to have more of those gender traits. And my work is to integrate more of that feminine. In this case, where I tend to lean towards more of the victim of the savior, I want to integrate more of the criminal and the perpetrator and realize that that is me. So what you can do is you can add up to kind of see where your split was. This does not mean that you leaned more towards dad versus mom. It's not that literal, but it can be. In my particular case, it was. I leaned more towards my father's overt behaviors and respected more of his masculine traits than my mother's feminine. And the work is to integrate those feminine that perhaps I saw as weak or subtle or unsafe. So you created this split for a reason, and your story will support it. But in order to achieve balance, you need to find the midpoint of each of these. So a lot of times we go to our main one depending on where we're stuck in our story or in our life. So if you're very much stuck in child or the younger years, you're going to lean more towards these child type archetypes. The caregiver hero looking for her mom and her dad in your story a lot, or deciding whether you're going to be the creator and the overt or the trickster and the covert power. Do you lie a lot? Do you manipulate a lot? Are you always telling the truth in the name of honesty and honor? This is pretty childlike, and you probably got stuck very early on in the story. This is more about pleasures. It's linked more to the teen years. Are you someone who's consistently looking for the next party or the next spiritual retreat? Then you're probably stuck more in a teenager story. Maybe you weren't allowed to necessarily explore certain things, and you're using your life to kind of unstick this lack of permission to be out in the world and experience life the way you thought it should be experienced. These are more of the adult archetypes. Are you fighting constantly for your next vacation or your next freedom or your next night out with the boys? You're trying to create some chaos and originality. You're somewhat of a rebel. You don't want to follow the rules. Are you the angel in your story or the demon? This could be caused by having to adult very quickly when you were a child. Or are you stuck here in your wound and how it defines you and your specialness and keeping yourself in exile. At a high vibration, this would be a spiritual adult, and you can see them listed here, which is the name of my book, How to Spiritual Adult. And the key is to integrate all of these archetype pairs, but understand that your wound is how you rule yourself, your life. When you stop seeking and you actually put something out positive into the world, it's through the wound that happened to you. So if you're using the wound appropriately and to help others or to put something out of what you've learned, your wisdom, then you have become what I call the wounded ruler. I'm not a believer in the wounded warrior, the wounded healer. I don't believe we heal anybody but ourselves and then transmute that into others, and others now have permission to do the same. But this is oftentimes when you also had to grow up, and perhaps you were tossed out very early, you had to grow up very early. And so these adult archetypes tend to be children that had to grow up quickly. And what they're trying to do is regain innocence in their older years. So it's not 100% precise, but they tend to be developmentally where we get stuck. So these are the pairs. You need all six in balance in what I call 48 to 52, finding a midpoint of how you live these out in your life in order to be a whole balanced individual. And you need to understand that you need the low consciousness and the high consciousness. So if you're deeming, for instance, the trickster, a covert power, someone who manipulates, as low consciousness, and you're only calling the creator high consciousness, then you're out of balance. It's then recognizing which to use in which appropriate situation. And that balance, of course, is what changes your life. So now your mental balance changes your physical balance, your life, your world, the way you the move in the world, and the vibration. And ultimately, the function of a lifetime is to raise our vibration from that moment of conception to wholeness and balance, and now live in that highest vibration. That's enlightenment. Thank you.